Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Berechot, Chapter 5, Halacha 1. Today, this is the third part of the shiur. Today we're getting into what about a non-Jewish king? You have somebody who's praying Shemona Esrei, and what happens if there's a non-Jewish king who comes and greets him, but it's sort of a dangerous situation. Perhaps the guy will get insulted and want to kill the Jew. What do you do then? What would you do? It's a very big problem because here you are, you're standing in front of the King of Kings, and now you have a bloodthirsty mortal king standing in front of you. What do you do? So the Gemara is going to talk about four incidences in which Roman officials actually show deference to the Amorim. Now, all of this is not necessarily going to be the halacha l'maisa, and you should always check in the Shulchan Aruch to get the halacha l'maisa. But this is showing a lot of very deep insights on these things. Now, first story starts off with Rabbi Yochanan. It says, Rabbi Yochanan was sitting and reciting the Shema in front of the Babylonian synagogue in Sipporim. And the archon, that's going to be a Greek word for a high official. And in the old days, in ancient Greece, the elected leaders were known as archons. And so arch is from like hierarchy or monarch, and it's somebody with authority. So a lot of times in the Yerushalmi will use Greek words, and a lot of times it'll use Persian words. But Greek words are very, very common in the text, much more so than in the Bavli. So when Rabbi Yochanan was sitting there, that was not under Greek rule. It was under Roman rule at the time. So don't get mixed up on that. But nonetheless, it uses a Greek word. The Greek word here is archona. So it's really referring to somebody who is somebody who's like a higher up. So that's also a stylistic point in the Yerushalmi, is that there'll a lot of times be Greek in here. So so the archon passed by, but Rabbi Yochanan did not rise before him, and the archon's servants approached Rabbi Yochanan and wanted to beat him for disrespecting the archon. And the archon said to him, "Leave him alone. He is occupied with the laws of his creator." Now, it's interesting because it's using the word who, and this idea is that, wow, what a distinction, because obviously this archon doesn't have the same belief system, and he's standing outside of the belief system of monotheism, and he's saying he's occupied with the laws of his creator, which is ironic because Kodesh Baruch Hu created everything, including this archon and the bullies. So, but nonetheless, he left them alone. There's going to be a second incident. Now, this is all going to have a theme, but this is the second incident. The Gemara says, Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi appeared before the proconsul of Caesarea. Now, this is going to be, there's two Caesareas in Israel. There's going to be one on the ocean, on the sea, Maritima, and then there's going to be one Caesarea Philippi, which is going to be up in the Goan area. And this is talking about Maritima. Anyway, so this is the one by the sea. So there was also an academy over there, and part of Caesarea, by the way, is outside of Eretz Yisrael. It was not in the Ole Bavel, and it comes up in Shvius that if you're in that area and you can see the sea, that there's no separation of produce that grew in a garden there. So anyway, so Caesarea, they're over there in Caesarea, and the proconsul saw them and rose before them. And they, the proconsul's servants, said to him, "Do you rise before these Jews?" The proconsul answered them, "I have seen the faces of angels." "What would this be?" Pnei Moshe said, "I stood up for them because they look like angels." So here they were. They were in a very hostile place in Israel at the time. They were in a very hostile environment with Roman persecutors who reveled in doing things to degrade Judaism. But here you have Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who were doing things for Avodas Hashem and Kiddush Hashem, and the Goyim were in such awe. And so, that's what the proconsul said. There's going to be a third incident. Rabbi Yonah and Rabbi Yosei appeared before Ariskinus. Now, Ariskinus was a Roman general who resided in Antioch under Julius Caesar and under Julius Caesar's term, and he was just a general in the area. So Ariskinus saw them and rose before them. And they, the proconsul's servants, said before him, "Do you rise before these Jews?" And the proconsul answered them. And he says, "I have seen the faces of these men before going to battle, going before me in battle, and I am victorious." So he's basically, this is a parallel with Shimon HaTzadik. You can find that in a story in Yoma in the Bavli. And that's talking about Alexander the Great making a statement when Shimon HaTzadik came out to come talk to him. And basically what he's saying is that when this Roman general would go out to do battle, that he would see the images of Rabbi Yonah and Rabbi Yosei when he was going to have a victory. And you can also see that there's something special that happens in the world with the Jew vis-a-vis the non-Jew when the Jew is getting very, very close to holiness and very, very close to Hashem. That a lot of these wrinkles in reality are going to be when the Jew is observing. When the Jew is observing and getting closer and refining himself and purifying himself, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and with everything of the form of the Jew. In other words, all the parts of what you're doing to be Jewish. You're really concentrating on your Shemona Esrei, you're really concentrating on the Shema, you're making sure your tefillin are correct, and that you're not, making mistakes in your prayer and things like that, that something special is going to happen with regards to the Jew who's doing those things vis-a-vis with the rest of the material or mundane world. Now there's a fourth incident. Rabbi Avin appeared before the king. And when he went out, he turned his back to the king. And the king's servants approached him and wanted to kill him. So here you have that, he was leaving the king's presence basically. And normally Rabbi Avin, turned his back to the king to walk out. And normally what was happening was when they would walk out from the king, you're supposed to have your stomach facing the king, and you're basically like in a semi-bowed area walking backwards to get out from the king. And so basically they saw it as he turned the back on the king and showed it like a sign of disrespect. Perhaps Rabbi Avin forgot this, or maybe he didn't know this custom in this particular place. But nonetheless, this is what happened. And the king's servants approached him and wanted to kill Rabbi Avin. And they saw 2 sparks of fire go out of his neck, and they left him alone. Marafulda says that the 2 sparks had the appearance of the tefillin straps that come out of the tefillin knot that was located at the base of the neck, and that's really amazing. So something really miraculous happened, and the servants backed off. And the Gemara says that this incident serves to fulfill that which is stated, all the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, and they will be in awe of you. In other words, in Devarim 28:10, this is going to be something that parallels the verse related to tefillin, and that specifically the tefillin on your head. So that's a physical manifestation in the reality of the tefillin, the verse in the tefillin on the head, actually being manifest in reality to protect this. I mean, Rabbi Avin, you go and you read, Kalayim, and you see some of the deepest insights in Kalayim or in Masros by Rabbi Avin. And so here, and a lot of the elucidations by this Amarah are really mind-blowing. Some of it is very technical with the law, some of it's very agadic. And this is the Rabbi Avin that had the merit of having this special help when there was an accident, and perhaps he turned his back by accident, wasn't trying to do this, obviously wasn't trying to do this, didn't know this custom, or it was a mistake, but nonetheless, they left him alone as they were trying to come kill him. And it was manifest from this verse that's talking about donning the head tefillin. Wow. So there's a related Baraisa with our great friend Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Gemara says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught in a Baraisa, all the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, and they will be in awe of you. And the extra word all comes to include even malevolent spirits and even demons, and these two will fear you. Now, this extra word all, this is a parallel because Shimon Bar Yochai, in another place in the Shas and the Yerushalmi, goes and explains where in Berechot the creation of the demons is in the first days of Berechot, and it parallels with the wording where it's sort of stepped back from obviousness like this, and so that this and that will parallel each other, and that when you look at it over there in Bereshit, you can see, oh yeah, that really is what it's talking about, but you need the oral law to show it to you. And this here is really showing you that, instead of saying the nations of the world, he's expounding this as saying all the nations of the world. And the all should be read as all, being the demons and malevolent spirits. And then, like as if there's a comma, the nations of the world, so that it's really these two things. That's really what Shimon Bar Yochai is saying that all should be read as the malevolent spirits, and then the nations of the world should be read as the actual people and nations in the world. That is a very deep reading. It's going to be a related incident, and by the way, this also is in this is the commentary on Devarim 28:10, and this again is referring to the head tefillin, and so you see something very special about the theology in Judaism is that if you're observing that even these malevolent spirits, that you're going to have protection, and so that there's a depth that even you can't see in why you should be observing, so that just like your eyes can't detect X-rays, you can't see X-rays, but they're there. So too, these other forces are there, and you don't even know what you're being saved from. And so that you have a depth of protection while you're observing, and that really what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is expressing is that we live in a very non-linear universe, a universe where there's a lot of things that you can't see happening that are happening, but that if you are observing, that you are going to be getting these extra layers of special protection that you yourself can't even detect, because your eyes are so limited. It's just a couple of pieces of meat in your head. You can't even see, higher spectrums of light. They're there. We know they're there. You have infrared. You have X-rays. You have radio waves. You have these. You just can't see them, but they're there. And one thing is that you have many colors as well. And many colors, the human eye is limited in being able to detect. We know that a lot of those colors are there. We just can't see them with those two pieces of meat you have in your eye. There's a type of crustacean, a type of shrimp called a mantis shrimp, and they have the ability to look into its eye, and they can see that it can see all these other spectrums of color that we know exist that we can't see, but that animal can see. And that's really remarkable, so that this level of reality that you have, you're trapped with the material that you have. You're trapped with these pieces of meat in your eye, and that's the range of colors that you can experience, see, and be aware of. And there's a higher level even for a simple animal like this mantis shrimp that can see something that's much more rich. It's there. And this is a lot of the idea that Shimon Bar Yochai is expressing in here, that, in this idea of all, that there's these other layers of spectra of things that are going on and occurring that you just can't see or detect, but nonetheless they're there, and you get protection from it when you observe. And when you don't observe, presumably they can cause you problems. So, and there's another idea like that in the Parsha in Balak. Parsha in Balak, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to write it down, but the Jews didn't actually experience that firsthand. That was happening in the background, and it was happening to the Jews. The Jews just weren't aware of it. Nonetheless, the Jews had protection. And that's the idea there, so that you don't know what protection you're getting today by trying to observe, but it's there nonetheless, even though you're pieces of meat and you're limited, 300 cc brain power, can't process it, doesn't mean it's not there. So you're limited by your flesh. There's a related incident. Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yonatan were walking in the street, and one of the high government officials saw them and greeted them. And he said, "May your peace be abundant." And they said to each other, "Even exalted people have no desire to harm us." So again, this is a very high non-Jewish official. And, people might have thought that that people would have animosity toward the Jews for abandoning Judaism, to try, because the non-Jews at the time were trying to get the Jews in the area to abandon Judaism. And here you are in an environment where the non-Jews are actively, as part of the government policy, not only the government policy, but the economic policy that they imposed on the people here, and every other type of policy that they imposed on here was actively to eradicate Jews from following Judaism. And here they are in this environment where you would have amazing hostility, and here it is, they have no desire to harm us. This great, big non-Jewish official, and the idea here is that we have to thank Hashem. And again, we have these ideas of Parshas Balak that's running through here that you don't know what ideas and manias are running through the high officials of the non-Jewish world at the time. There's many people who say that Joseph Stalin died on the day when he decided that he wanted to purge the Soviet Union of Jews. That in another incident, there was a guy named Beria, who was the head of the KGB, and he decided to poison Stalin. And there's a lot of evidence that Stalin's death was not an accidental thing, and it was a incident of poisoning. And a lot of the Cold War people think that the KGB was afraid that Stalin was about to get the Soviet Union into a direct conflict with the United States, and so they Kodesh Baruch Hu popped into the mind of Beria, who was later executed, who was the head of the KGB, to go poison Stalin. And they killed him. But what day did they kill him on? They killed him on the day before he could sign an order to kill the Jews in the Soviet Union. So you don't know what you're being protected from. And that's kind of the idea here. And you don't know what's in the mind of these people. Now the Gemara is going to relate a few incidents in which the Amorim were protected from harm. By the way, the death of Stalin with the severe stomach ailment and all of the symptoms, those are very common in poisonings. Those are symptoms and signs of poisonings. If you go and you look at it, and you talk to people that are experts in the field, there's a lot of not only just Russian but also American intelligence people that think that he was actually poisoned. It was not a natural death. People that are very familiar with military grade poisons. So it was probably not an accidental thing. But even if, quote unquote, it was not a poisoning, right, and he just died on that day of natural causes, he died on the day when he had a bill in front of him to sign to start to eradicate Jews in the Soviet Union, and he died before he could sign it. So now we're going to get into Amorim, where their property is going to be protected from harm. Now, why is this in here? Why are we going through this? What's the point of this, right? What this is trying to do for you is to show you that you are going to get special protection in this world for yourself and for your family and for your property if you are making yourself more holy. If you are refining yourself, you are going to see something that is going to be different, and you are going to stand above nature, and you're going to get special help from Hashem, and just the way that you are walking through the world is not going to be the same as someone who is not observing. In fact, those people will see a lot of problems in their life. Rish Lakish was meditating very deeply on the Torah while walking. By the way, with Rish Lakish, it was common that before he would go and study with Rabbi Yochanan, he would review the Mishnah 40 times before he would even sit down to study with Rabbi Yochanan on the topic that he was talking about. And he studied just chapter 7 for 3.5 years with Rabbi Yochanan, just one chapter of the Gemara. So really, he was very deep meditation and thinking very deep on the Torah. And not only that, but his conduct is very great. And the Gemara continues, and it says that he went out of the Techem of Shabbos without realizing it. And this incident serves to fulfill that which is stated, in your love for her Torah, you will err constantly. In other words, that he made an accidental mistake, and he was so involved in the learning that he made a mistake. Now this is going to get us into another idea. Okay, and the other idea is that Rabbi Yudan, the son of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, by the way, was the head of the academy for a period of time. Rabbi Yudan, the son of Rabbi Yishmael, was meditating very deeply on the Torah, and his cloak slipped off of him, and a snake came and guarded it. And his disciples said to him, "Master, your cloak has slipped off." And he replied to them, "Is not that wicked one the snake guarding it?" In other words, that you can see similar versions in the Bavli. This one would be in the Bavli and Eruvin. Also, the Rish Lakish one would be in Bavli and Eruvin. If you want to look at it, you can see it's in Eruvin 43b and 54b. But nonetheless, the Yerushalmi version has some differences. And some of the differences are not just scribal, but they're trying to teach slight differences. And that you can look at the nuances, and you can see different messages coming out when you hold the text side by side. But over here we're really talking about a sage who is deeply engrossed in Torah thoughts, and something that is special that's happening when you are very deep in contemplating Torah. That's really the idea that the Yerushalmi is trying to get at, is that material itself has a different relationship with the Jew when he is deeply engrossed in concentrating on Torah. So the Mishnah states that even if a snake is coiled around his heel, he should not interrupt. And the Gemara qualifies the ruling. Rabbi Huna, in the name of Rabbi Yosei, says that they taught this ruling only regarding a snake, but he may interrupt his prayers if he sees a scorpion coming toward him. And why would a scorpion be treated differently than a snake? What's the difference between this and that? That's really what it's trying to get at. A snake is poisonous, dangerous, potentially deadly. Same with a scorpion. What's the difference? So, we have to realize that, we're not supposed to move out of the place of prayer, even if it's to prevent being bitten. But why would that be? This would be regarding a snake that will not bite unless it feels threatened. If there's a bite that, the snake will feel threatened, then you have a very serious issue. The scorpion, though, the nature is very different. The Rambam, he explains about this in his commentary in the Mishnah, that the snake is not all snakes are going to bite unless they're threatened. And the nature of the scorpion, says the Rambam, is that they're prone to sting, and that it will sting even if it's not threatened. And the snake doesn't have that in its nature, that the snake normally will not bite unless it's threatened, and that's why you have the difference between the two. The Gemara continues, says, because it stings time after time. In other words, that the nature of the scorpion is going to be where it's just going to, it's very angry, it's very aggressive, it's just going to keep stinging you, whether it feels threatened or not. The Gemara qualifies the ruling of the Mishnah further and says, Rabbi Illa says, they said this ruling only if the snake was coiled around his heel, but if the snake was hissing and moving toward him ready to attack, then he should hide himself from the snake, and as long as he did not interrupt his prayer by calling for help. So this is where he should try to move out of his place to a spot where the snake will not see him. And this is talking about an angry snake. Once I was in Jerusalem, and there was a very large snake trying to cross the road, and I felt like it was like coming at me and very angry. And I was walking, and it started changing its direction, coming toward me, and a car went by and squashed it. And sometimes snakes here can do that. I never saw that before, but I saw it. That the snake noticed me walking on the sidewalk in Jerusalem, by the woods, by the forest, and the snake really changed its direction, really started coming toward me, and I started walking faster, and as I was moving faster, it started moving, slithering more toward me. And out of nowhere, a car came and squashed it, and that was that. But sometimes they can have this kind of behavior, and the sages know that, and they're talking about it. And we're trying to talk about this in terms of what are we going to do. So sometimes they can get very angry and try to attack. It can happen. I've seen it. And what about when this is going to be in terms of prayer? Now, normally you should try to move to a spot where the snake is not going to see him and is not going to get angry like this. And, if you're, talking or you're moving out of your place, it would be considered an interruption. And by the way, talking is going to be a bigger interruption. So really what you should be trying to do is you should just try to move to a place where the snake is not going to see you. And that's the recommendation by the Vilna Goan in his Beur HaGra. And the Vilna Goan says it's prohibited for him to call for help because the interruption of prayer with talking, that's the idea. And there's going to be a related topic in the Brisa. It was taught in the Brisa. If he was standing and praying on a thoroughfare or a plaza, and there's passing traffic that's going to put him in danger, if he stays in that same place, he should move away from the path of a donkey or a wagon, as long as he does not interrupt his prayer by calling for help. So the Vilna Gaon in Beur HaGra is saying that in this case too, since it is sufficient to move out of the path of the donkey or the wagon, it is prohibited to call for help. And that, in order, Vilna Gaon points out, in order to avoid these problems, you should avoid praying in a busy street or a plaza in the first place. But nonetheless, if you started to pray for some foolish reason and then there's a wagon that's coming, you're allowed to move to get out of danger, but you should not be calling for help. You should not be using your voice in that case. This case is a little bit different than the snake. Sometimes there are snakes in Jerusalem, and perhaps you don't notice it, and they can get angry. I've seen it. The Brisa continues and says that it was said about Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa that he was once standing and praying, and a chavar bar came and bit him. Now, let's talk about the chavar bar. Now, that a lot in the lore of the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, it's it's going to be sometimes called on a road, or it's going to be something where the bite is going to be fatal. Some people say that it's a crossbreed between a type of a snake and a toad. Perhaps it's talking about some sort of very strange sort of lizard that, sometimes they can have very, very long tails, and their bites can also be very dangerous. They have types of lizards like monitor lizards on islands and things like that the bite is very poisonous because they have a lot of bacteria in the mouth, and they don't inject any kind of poison per se. They don't have like hollow fangs like a snake does, but the mouth is so dirty because it eats carrion, it eats dead animals, that if somebody gets a bite from one of these kinds of monitor lizards, that the bite will be fatal because the bacteria in the mouth is so deadly. This animal is immune to it, but it actually, it houses these very dangerous bacteria, and it's real, and you can check it about monitor lizards on these islands. Perhaps this is talking about this type of thing that you could describe as like a cross between like a type of snake and a toad. You have these kinds of desert reptile lizards that they have very, very long tails, and they have like a very broad mouth, and that you can see these sorts of like desert lizards, and I think it's describing a type of desert lizard with a very long tail and a very broad mouth, like a toad, and that these can have the bites can be deadly. And we know that there are such animals today, like the monitor lizards that live on these islands, that the bite is in fact deadly to an animal or a human and will kill them very, very quickly. And it's not from a toxin it injects; it's just from just extremely deadly bacteria that resides in the mouth from eating dead flesh and carrion and being a scavenger. Nonetheless, it was said about Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa that he was standing and praying, and a chavar bar came and bit him, but he did not interrupt his prayer. And they went and they found the chavar bar lying dead upon the opening of its burrow, and they said to him, "Woe to the man who was bitten by a chavar bar, but woe to the chavar bar who is bit by Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa." So that's quite a story. So why would that be? Now, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, I think this is the Tana, and there's Mishnahs with him, and there are a lot of like very, very deep and foundational rulings that come about in Judaism from Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. So this is a man of great learning, great merit, great piety, and something happens with the nature. Now he is in the service of Hashem. He's praying. He doesn't know that the chavar bar comes and bites him. And is he affected during that service of Hashem in the middle of that mitzvah? No. In fact, the chavar bar died. The chavar bar died for biting him while he was in the middle of the service of Hashem. The Gemara interrupts with a clarification. It says, what is the nature of the chavar bar? It says, when it bites a person, if the person reaches water first, the chavar bar dies. But if the chavar bar reaches water first, the person dies. So why would that be? The Yafa Marah says that reaching water first acts as a skula to save the life of the person bitten by this chavar bar. And Yafa Marah says that since a person bitten by a chavar bar must immediately rush to water, so that he and not the chavar bar will reach water first. How did Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, who did not even feel the bite, survive? Asks the Yafa Marah. So what's going on over here? And the Brisa continues, says, Rabbi Hanina's students asked him and said, "Our master, did you feel the bite of the chavar bar?" And he answered them, "May misfortune befall me if I felt the bite of the chavar bar, because I was concentrating on my prayer and I did not feel the bite." In other words, he was so engrossed in the prayer, he was so concentrating on the prayer, that even when he was bit, he didn't notice it. And that he is saying that had he even noticed it and distracted himself from the prayer, that would have been a Hilul Hashem. That would have been a degradation of what he was doing. And you can see the level of concentration that these great Torah masters have and they had, and how we have to learn from that. And then Gemara now is going to explain what happened with Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. And the Gemara continues, says, Rabbi Yitzhak ben Elazar says, the Holy One, blessed is He, created a well beneath the soles of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa's feet. And this incident serves to fulfill that which is stated, that the will of those who fear Him He will do, and their prayer He will heal, and He will save them. In other words, that the simple explanation of the verse, says the Yafei Morah, is that when those who fear, the simple explanation of the verse, says the Yafei Morah, is that when those who fear Hashem pray, they will be saved, and Hashem will indeed hear their prayers and save them. And the Gemara is explaining the verse a little bit differently. It says that when those who fear Hashem pray for their needs, if they pray with such concentration that their prayers are deemed worthy of being heard, Hashem will not only accept their prayers, but will even save them from the calamities of which they had no knowledge, as in the case of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. In other words, that Hashem didn't change the law of nature, right? We see, oh, well, you got to get to the water, right? But it just so happened that this is, Hashem put water, there was water there under him. In other words, there was a well right there. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa didn't even know it. But the point is that, that Hashem, through rearranging of the nature, arranged it within the rules of nature, where, because God is continuously creating, where this worked out to the benefit of someone who, had such fear of Hashem and service of Hashem, and Hashem will save them from calamities even that they don't have knowledge of, even things that are going to be limited with the information that they have available to them. Now, I want to point out the parallel in the Bavli. You can find the parallel in the Bavli, Berechot 33a, and there are differences, right? One of the main differences over there is that, according to this Gemara, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa inadvertently allowed himself to be bitten by the snake, and he didn't even feel it. Now, according to the Bavli version, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, who knew that, and it uses the word arod, that the arod would die, intentionally placed his foot over the opening of its burrow and hole. And he did this in order to rid the area of this very harmful, deadly creature. And after the arod died, he placed it upon its shoulder and brought it to the study hall and said, "See, my children, it is not the arod that kills, but it is the sin that kills." And that is the deep idea here about how sin works, how prayer works, and like that. Now, in the Yerushalmi version is saying that if you are religious, if you are observing, if you are refining yourself, if you are staying away from sin, and you are observing Torah and mitzvot, and you are learning every day, and you are concentrating on your prayer without distractions, that you are going to have the merit of being saved even from things you are not aware of. The version on the Bavli, both are true. The version on the Bavli is that you are going to only have death and decay and problems in your life from sin. And that sin is going to degrade you and lower you and lower the material that you have in your life, be it your body or your possessions, and that sin brings death. And that is the lesson of both of them side by side, and both of them are correct. Have a great day.